want to kick us off and introduce, and we'll get going with you.
Yeah, of course I can. Yeah, thank you, James. And good afternoon, everyone. And it's really nice to be in your company for the next hour. I'm looking forward to the next hour. I think we should have some really interesting discussions. My name's Phil Stocker. I'm the Chief Executive of the National Sheep Association. And I'm really pleased to be hosting this webinar in partnership and working in partnership with Breedr. I think our industry is in a time of real change, and it's really good to be working with a company like Breedr, looking at new approaches and new initiatives going forward. Before we start, really, I'd just like to say that sheep farming, like all of agriculture and probably all of business, to be honest, as well, is going through a period of massive national and global change. Some of this, I would say, still isn't being felt on farm just at the moment, but I think we can be fairly sure that it will be over the next few years. And you might also argue that some of the change we've seen over the last couple of years, I guess, has led to strong sheep prices. And some people might be asking the question, what are we concerned about? The sheep prices are really strong. Is there anything to worry about? But, I think the sheep prices are only one piece of an incredibly complicated puzzle. And we're also seeing input prices rocket at the moment. And the cost of doing anything raises question marks about whether that investment should continue or not. We're seeing global trade flow changing before our very eyes. We're on the verge of new trade deals with Australia and New Zealand, the other two largest sheep-producing nations in the world. And our very well set and traditional volumes of sheep exports into the EU are changing as well. Opportunities are being seen elsewhere in Asia. Definitely, we've definitely got new trade opportunities. And the one really good thing at the moment, I think, is that we're seeing some real strength in our domestic market. And I think for a long time, our domestic market may not have always been the most lucrative market, but is certainly the most stable and reliable. And I think is really, really important to us. But where all this the markets and our trade is going to bottom out is still unclear. Then we come on to the whole area of agricultural policy. Agricultural policy, whether you engage with it or not, it really is the foundation for how we operate. And well, in terms of agricultural policy, you might say that the rule book is up in the air at the moment, with all the pages fluttering down, and quite where they're going to land again is really unclear. Whether they'll land in an orderly manner is going to be unclear as well. On top of that, we've got climate change and global warming and nature recovery, all as really big influences on our policy direction. And it's unclear at the moment how the subject of food security and food supply will be seen, and whether we may be on the verge of any level of global disruption due to food supply and people migration in the future as well. There was a time when some of those comments might have been seen as being fairly outlandish, but I'm not so sure now, really. So there couldn't be a more uncertain or maybe a more interesting time to be farming, I would say. But it's worth considering one of the strands of farm policy direction, which is about improving our productivity. That will be one of the key themes coming out of DEFRA policy, about improving farm productivity. I would say that improving farm productivity is a really misunderstood word. It was probably the wrong choice of the word, because for a long time, most people interpreted that as a need for us to produce more to feed a growing population. But, as it's emerged, as it become clear, what we mean by productivity is really profitability. And the government are pushing us towards our farming enterprises being profitable and not reliant on subsidy. And government want this. And to be honest, so do all of us. I don't think as a farmer in the land, it wouldn't want their enterprises to be profitable without reliance on subsidy or grants. They're nothing better than we would want, I don't think. And for farms that run in a way that integrate production with environmental goods, again, there couldn't be a better place for us to be to negotiate reasonable payment for public goods if we are negotiating from a position of profitability and independence as well. and not from a position of desperation. There's no worse to be negotiating anything than from a position of desperation, really. So back to this webinar and Breedr, really. Breedr have much experience of using technology and data and information to drive efficiencies in the cattle sector, and they're now in the process of developing ways to do similar for sheep farmers. So we're going to start today looking at store lamb finishing. Store lamb finishing, straightforward and simple, isn't it? Well, we'll see about that as we get into the depths of this webinar, really. And we've got delighted today to welcome Kate Phillips. Again, most people here will know Kate from her days at ADAS, and then as an independent consultant, and then more recently at Harper Adams, and now an independent consultant. But she's well known and well respected within the sheep industry, and she's going to be talking for 20 minutes or so on managing store lambs and trying to put a little bit more certainty into the store lamb enterprise. Following that, we'll hear from Breedr, from James himself, about some of their work and their plans and the services that they plan to offer the sheep sector in the future. And then we'll save time for questions and discussion from all the delegates as well. So without any more ado, I'll pass over to you, Kate. And
Thank you, Phil. Right, I'll just share my screen. Okay.
We practiced this, so we
We'll
know
manage
it
it,
works.
James.
Well done.
We'll manage it. Okay.
That's working well.
There we are.
All right, everybody. Good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Nice to be here and to share this platform with Phil and with James. I've been asked to give a very quick, and it will be quick, a 20-25 minutes overview of store lamb management, really, in relation very much to weighing and recording and data analysis, really. So just to get started, I'm going to basically talk about diet and feed availability, where we need to start in terms of any store lamb enterprise, be it your own lambs that you're finishing or purchase lambs. I want to make quite a bit of play about biosecurity, health and welfare. They're key things in productivity, as Phil said. Keeping these lambs alive and healthy will mean they'll grow fast and be efficient. So that's really valuable stuff to really focus on. And then I'll talk a little bit about weighing and monitoring performance and how that can help us manage our animals. So before buying lambs, we need to really consider, well, several things. I'm talking about calculating feed availability, what food is available and how many lambs could be finished on what's there. So what could we be feeding them? We could be feeding dairy grazing. Certainly around me here in Shropshire, many of the dairy farms are covered in store lambs at the moment, all romping on fantastic looking grass. Obviously there's other grass available other than dairy grazing, but that's one key one and actually does work out usually very economical to finish lambs. There's often, and again, in my patch of the world here in Shropshire, many farmers would plant acres and acres of forage crops, particularly stubble turnips, to finish lambs through the winter. And obviously we would need some dry forage and potentially some concentrates with those to actually finish the animals. Some people, not so many, are feeding just forage and concentrates. Not very many bringing animals inside to finish on concentrates alone these days, given that compound feeds are somewhere in the range of, over £300 a tonne. It will be an incredibly expensive way to finish lambs this autumn, this winter. So the other things we need to consider are the target market and spec. So before actually launching into any store lamb enterprise, and many of you who are doing this already will have secured your market, be it through the live market or through dead weight selling on any particular scheme you've got. And of course, meeting the specification of that particular market is really key to success in terms of maximising the price per lamb that you achieve. And of course, a budget. It's always worth doing a budget to see if you've got a margin potentially within a lamb finishing system, because as many of you would appreciate, there are good years and bad years for store lamb finishing. Sometimes it's a loss-making enterprise and other times it can be completely the opposite. So just a little mention about grazing forage crops and welfare, because this is a key one. And it's one of those things that the public see and don't always like when we're grazing root crops. So we've just got to be really careful how we manage this. So selecting a really well-drained field, fairly flat field, and grazing downhill is always a good thing, in the sense that the standing crop will retain any of the runoff rather than it going the opposite direction. So we actually avoid water pollution. We need to always provide a dry lying area and ad-lib water for the animals, even though they don't drink very much when they're on a wet crop of only 10% dry matter. We need to provide a run back, a dry run back, preferably grass, so they have an alternative source of food, but also that they can get off a wet crop in poor conditions. We may be needing to belly clip and dag these animals so that they are better and easier to market when it comes to selling them. And we should, when we're working out a crop yield, which everybody should be doing to work out what they've got in the field, taking quadrats and actually assessing the volume of crop in the field. So we usually assume about a 70% intake of the forage crop and 30% of the diet coming from other forage, usually some dry forage to keep the rumen nice and healthy, and potentially some concentrates if necessary to finish the lambs finally. Strip graze to improve utilisation. We generally only assume the maximum of 80% utilisation on the forage crop, but also strip grazing is effective in the sense that on, say, stubble turnips, the root itself, the bulb itself, has quite a low protein content and is full of sugar, whereas the tops are full of protein. So if we actually let animals go straight across the crop, they will just take the leaves off and have a high protein diet to start with. But if we actually graze them in strips, they have to take the whole balanced diet as it is, as stubble turnips could be, say, 17% protein as the whole bulb and leaves above. So strip grazing actually does improve utilisation and gives the animals a better balanced diet as they go across the crop. And of course, if grazing dishes are very poor, we can get very poor utilisation, but if they come in dirty, we need to get them dry and clean before slaughter. So we need to house them on some dry straw in sheds for maybe 1 or 2 weeks. I've just put this little slide in just to give anybody who's trying to work out dry matter allocations on any particular crop, but just to give you some idea of the sort of dry matter intake we'd be needing. So this is for a 30-odd kilo lamb, growing at 200 grams a day, would need about 1.2 kilos of dry matter intake. So we need to work out the dry matter yield of the crop per hectare, divide by the number of lambs, take into account the utilisation and how much we will get from other feeds. And then we can work out how many lambs a particular area of crop can actually feed for how long. I put this in, this is taken from a lamb finishing booklet from HCC, but this just shows the average overall daily gain for animals reaching slaughter weight. So if you look at the line that says 42 kilos, which is a target for most of us, to get it to 42 kilos by 5 months of age, it needs to grow at 250 grams a day. If you were going to sell it at 12 months of age, it only needs to grow at 104 grams a day. Now, we don't really want any lambs growing at 104 throughout their life, because that would be incredibly low performance. So what we aim to do, of course, is to maximize growth rate in the early months of an animal's life. So they're being most efficient, their feed conversion ratio is best at an early age, and it gets worse and worse and worse the closer you get to 12 months. So in practice, what happens, we don't use these average growth rates. It's basically really good growth rate while they're on the mothers, slips a bit at weaning, and then we can actually grow them fairly slowly over the winter, autumn time with stores, and then maybe step up the feeding rate to finish them quickly at the latter stages of their lives. So just to give you an idea of the sort of growth rates we need, so 5 months, 250 grams a day, that would be quite achievable on many grass-based systems. So, of course, everybody needs to do a budget. Is there going to be any money in finishing these lambs? Now, this is just a made-up budget, completely made up. I've just put a few figures in, valuing the price of store lamb at £85, put something in for concentrate feeds, something for forage, vet and med at, say, £2 a head, Market and haulage and sundries, about £6. I've allowed for 2% mortality in this calculation. So I'm saying a lamb would be going out. This is about £5.80 a kilo, I think I've used. So we're coming up with a net margin of about £8 per lamb. Now, it could look very different depending on the system you're choosing, but I think it's always well worthwhile going through these calculations to make sure there is some money left for you at the end of the day. All being well, we've got a good crystal ball that can actually tell us what the price is going to be at the end of the day. But you've got to take a stab at that and hope for the best. So just a bit about new sheep arriving on farm. It's really critical. If you've got a resident flock at home, it is really critical to avoid importing disease to those animals. So the high risks of any new sheep coming on the farm is lameness, CODD, which is, once you've got it, quite hard to get rid of. Foot rot is, ubiquitous. We've got it everywhere, but it's getting better. We are getting much better at controlling that. And of course, scald is a regular offender in lambs in particular. So lameness is an issue, and we should be really vigilant. And maybe as animals come off a lorry, they should be walked through a footbath as they arrive on farm. Sheep scab, a big issue for many areas, and some of you will be aware of the sheep scab project, which is going on across England at the moment in the southwest and the Midlands and in the north of England. But I've had store lamb finishers say to me, I buy sheep scab with every load of lambs I buy. So that's not something you want to be buying. So really thinking about how we deal with that as they arrive on farm and what we need to do. Resistant worms, also big issue internationally, and potentially we could be bringing fluke as well. But if buying batches of lambs, I always think this would be the perfect world if every farmer who sold animals gave the buyers the past disease history of those animals, so they could know all the vaccinations and treatments from the producer, so that there is some confidence in terms of what these animals will need going forward and how to treat them when they arrive. So on arrival, check all sheep, feet and fleeces, check for pulled fleeces for scab and lice and the like, and hopefully foot bath, as I said. Record the EID if it should be available. It's on every lamb that you're buying, and weigh them and sort into groups by type. Now, interestingly, I was involved in a project up in the north of Yorkshire on lamb finishing. It was a sort of performance recording project with Swaledale sheep, actually, but it's very interesting. We were looking at the performance of different breeds of sheep on one lamb finishing farm, and how important that can be in how they perform. So we would need to treat any that are obviously lame and isolate them, put them in a hospital group until they are completely sound, and then they can rejoin the group. Treat for resistant worms, particularly if you've got resident sheep on your farm and you're going to be putting onto grazing. So treat for resistant worms and hold them off pasture for 48 hours if possible, and quarantine that group, and hopefully move to grass after those 2 days. The one thing that we picked up on the North Yorkshire project was the impact of stress on new lambs arriving on farm. So don't do everything at once. Mortality being really quite high in small hill lambs, which aren't used to being packed together. So going carefully over treatments on arrival is really important. So let them settle in on some grass if possible. And then if they're transitioning to a new diet, that should be done really slowly. And if scab is a real risk, and it sounds like it is in many store lamb markets, treat all for sheep scab. So preferably plunge dipping in organophosphate, or inject if that's the only thing possible for you. Remember that there is resistance in the sheep scab mite to some of the injectables, so plunge dipping would probably be the preferable thing to do. Trace element supplements may be needed for some animals, particularly on root crops. Often iodine, copper and selenium can be short on root crops. So making sure you've got that sorted is really important. And if at all possible, quarantine each group of new lambs for 3 to 4 weeks before mixing with any other groups. So you've spotted any issues with other health problems, and you've sorted them out before mixing and spreading to the rest of the animals on the farm. So just moving now to data recording and weighing. Really valuable information can be gathered from actually weighing regularly. One of the things that I'm quite keen on, if you're breeding your own replacements, keeping individual records on sheep will help to identify the best ewes for replacements. So those ewes that have reared lambs quickly, got them off farm quickly, you've got good information on growth rates, maybe on birthing and that sort of thing, and carcass information, so you can actually help to select your own breeding ewe replacements from your own flock. Likewise, you can identify the sires of lambs that grow fastest and produce the best carcasses to meet customer requirements. And many of you will have seen Ram Compare and looked at EBVs for superior sires that give us the best efficiency in terms of growth and carcass quality. The other thing for store lamb finishers, and this came out with the North Yorkshire project, you can actually identify the producers by their UK numbers who breed the best lambs of stores for repeat purchase in the following year. So looking at things like mortality rate, which of the breeders have you brought from? Are those lambs really healthy and vital and don't die on you? And which are growing fastest and on farm for the least time? So those are really important aspects. And of course, weighing regularly gives a very early indication of animal health or nutritional problems, because as many of you would know, the impact of worms isn't necessarily seen in the animals, but you probably would see it in a lower growth rate. So that sort of thing really helps you to keep on top of that, all sorts of health issues and potentially nutritional problems. If for some reason they aren't getting what they need, you need to add something in. Maybe a trace element deficiency would be showing up and lambs weren't growing fast enough, maybe because of a cobalt deficiency, which can be quickly sorted out. So I just wanted to show you, this is the sort of information from the North York Swaledale project. On the bottom of this slide, on the x-axis, those are the rams that were used, and these are the growth rates from the lambs that were born to those. And it just stands out very quickly, doesn't it, that ram 9344 had the highest growth rate by quite a long chalk compared to all the other rams in this particular assessment. And days to slaughter were far lower because it was growing so much faster. So having the data really enabled these farmers to choose the best rams and actually decide which were going to be the best breeding animals. And this was all about improving wether lambs for Swaledale breeders. So to make that byproduct of Swaledale ewe breeding a more valuable commodity. So just finally, I think I've probably raced through this rather faster than I intended, but just thinking about the target market and what we're trying to achieve with store lamb finishing. We need to think about the target weight and grade, and most often we're aiming at 16 to 21 kilos at R2 and 3L, but obviously some outlets are very happy to take 3H lambs. We need animals to be clean and unbruised, so handled carefully and no obvious dirt clinging to the fleeces. We need to ultimately, if we're selling dead weight, really good practice to be checking grading sheets for grade in terms of fat class and conformation, but all of the sort of health issues that might be highlighted, pneumonia, abscesses, dog tapeworms, all of those things will help us to improve the health of the animals going forward. The next batch is coming through if we're picking up on the health issues highlighted on any grading sheets. And of course, that really is important to select at the right grade and weight to optimize returns. So we don't want animals going over the target weight, because we just get a flat rate payment then at say 21 kilos, and we've sold a 23 kilo lamb. We've wasted 2 kilos of growth and money that's cost to put on that 2 kilos. And I just wanted to point out, this was the taken from the ADB Sheep Yearbook for 2019, but this showed that in terms of England and Wales, we were getting 58% of our lambs in the target spec, class 2 or 3L, EU and R. We were getting 14% too fat, but that did include 3H, and I know some abattoirs are very happy to take 3H, and 28% were on poor conformation, which would tend to be the sort of some smaller hill lambs, which maybe aren't as well conformed as some lowland lambs, and maybe ragtag and bobtails that everybody has at the end of the year. But just to point out that that really is critical. And the one thing about selecting lambs when they're actually ready for finish, remember it takes 4 to 6 times more energy to lay down fat than muscle. So that is, and often if animals are taken to being too fat, that fat is cut off and thrown away. So complete waste of money. So actually selecting at the right grade is pretty critical to optimizing return. So I have whizzed through that incredibly quickly, so I maybe shouldn't have gone quite so fast. I was anxious that everybody else got a chance to talk. So I'm finished there. Thanks, Phil. So
Thank you,
if
Kate.
anybody has any questions, I'm very happy to take them.
Thanks, Kate. That was absolutely excellent. I mean, it was just packed with some really good information, and you always learn something new, don't you, when you listen to something like that? And the other great thing is the reminders of the things that you did know and you've forgotten as well. So it's a great refresher course, that, I think. There is a question coming, but I if I can take the initiative and just ask a couple of my own questions first. One was about Pasturella in particular, and understanding the veterinary treatment. I think you mentioned that in your presentation, but I was surprised a couple of years ago to hear that, you know, one of my biggest areas of antibiotic use was in store lamb producers buying in lambs who were then suffering, you know, serious losses with Pasturella. So that was one question. What more can we do around that? And the other one was really just a comment when you said, you know, record the lambs coming in by flock and then buy from the ones that perform best again. It's that tricky issue, isn't it, really? But it would be great if we could actually tell those people whose lambs weren't performing so well what the outcome was, so that they could then go on and improve again, really. But
Absolutely, Phil. Well, on that latter point, interestingly, on that North Yorkshire project, one of the finishers we were working with had decided he wasn't buying from certain producers already because the mortality of the lambs they bought from them was high. So you know, that is quite telling. And I've heard of dairy farmers, calf rearers doing exactly the same, that, you know, calves coming onto farm, high loss rate from certain dairy farms, but very good survivability from other farms. So they are very careful about where they buy them from. But I think from the Pasturella perspective, Phil, yeah, a lot of lambs die of Pasturella on moving farm and changing diet. It's really stressful for them. And I particularly noticed with those little Swaledales moving from an open hill environment to a sort of lowland farm onto a completely new diet. And, you know, they are very stressed. And interestingly, in that particular project, this little Swaledales didn't grow very well until after Christmas. They actually, because they were so, I think, they knocked back by the stress of moving. And unless they're fully vaccinated, and I remember the Origin farm had double vaccinated them, and the store lamb finisher vaccinated them again. So they all had 3 vaccines. But yeah, I just think it's managing stress is the most important thing for Pasturella avoidance. Yeah. So if you're just on the edge of causing one too many stresses to those animals, then you'll tip the balance to Pasturella. Yeah. So I think it's handling them very carefully and gently, and making changes very gradual.
Great. Thank you very much, Kate. So let's ask a question by Mark Young. Hello, Mark. Mark has posted a question. Kate, how or what can you assess which store lambs will return you more when you go to buy them and you have a choice of different lots? Maybe we will come back to that question again at the end after James has given his presentation. But do you want to pass any comment on that now?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I do know of producers who would only pick particular types of lambs because they've proven it to themselves over years that those are the ones that do best for them. So it's well grown, it's healthy, it's clean fleeces, it's clean bums. It's all of the things that you would say, Mark, in terms of them not looking poor and underdone and already sort of compromised before you get them home, because they have got to go through quite a stressful situation on lorries, through market, on lorry, etc., unless they're being bought from the farm of origin. So yeah, it comes down to type. So I think there are breeders who are finishers, should I say, who are already very much biased to one particular type of lamb that they would choose. and size of lamb. Interestingly, the store lamb finish that I've mentioned already wouldn't take any lambs below 25 kilos, for instance. He was very concerned that that was a cut-off for him because he found they were the ones that he had more losses in. So yeah, I hope that's...
Thanks. And yeah, we may well come back to that again later on, but let's move on then. And I'll introduce James Wright. James Wright is from Breedr. James is well known to us. He was part of our NSA Next Generation program some years ago now, and is a regular writer in the Weekly Farming Press as well. So James, let's hand over to you for a moment.
Perfect. Thanks, Phil. It was a long time. It does feel like a long time ago. I don't think I qualify anymore for the NSA and Young Ambassadors. Kate, it's so wonderful to hear you talk, because all of the problems and the things that you said people need to look at when they're buying stall lambs are problems that you can solve in Breedr. And you know, as Phil said at the start, it is all about driving farmer profitability, making sure you're buying the right stock, selling it for the right price, and in between managing your data and making the most of what you've got. And that's exactly why we exist. So I'm going to spend 15 minutes just taking everyone through a little whistle-stop tour of our new Breedr sheep app. If you already use our Breedr cattle app, you would have seen some of this before, but I just want to show you what we've been working on for sheep and talking about some of the stuff that's coming up in the future as well. If that's all right with everyone. Do ask questions as we're going through. I'm just going to share my screen. So you should hopefully, and tell me if you can't, see the Breedr web and mobile app. Is that right? Phil's nodding, so I'll take that as positive affirmation. So for you guys who don't know, Breedr is a mobile and web app. It works on Android and on your iPhone. If you've got multiple people on your farm, they can all log into the same account. Sorry, all have access to the same account. Using our really cool users tool. And then also the app importantly works online and offline, because although I'm in the southeast and we've got signal everywhere, I know there are many of you in Shropshire, for example, that don't have any phone signal when you walk outside the front door. So Breedr's built to work online and offline, which is really important. And at Breedr, we've got over 4,000 British beef farmers using the app to monitor and manage their cattle, and we're really excited to bring you Breedr sheep, which is going to be available soon, to do exactly the same thing for sheep. So when you've got your account, once sheep's live, what you'll see is this new species switcher, which is calling it. So there's a fancy name for a little button that allows you to access your sheep. And so not only do I have all of my cattle records, but I've also got all of my sheep records as well. And we can see here we've got ewe lambs, and rams. We can see some are pregnant, but this is all of the sheep I've got on my farm. At the moment, we manage sheep as individuals, but we're also working on an update that allow you to manage your sheep as batches, as groups of sheep. And I can tap in here and I can see their history. I can see that this animal was moved. I can see that it was weighed, that it had a drench. And we can see that history. And so when Kate was talking about, make sure that you get the history from the person that you're buying these animals from, that's what you get on Breedr. When an animal moves from one farm to another, that history moves with it. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in a minute as well. We can also see any offspring that this animal, this is a ewe lamb, so it hasn't had any offspring, but we can see that family tree in the mobile app as well. So I know, as much as anyone, being a small farmer myself, that managing my records, particularly my medicine records, is a real pain. And we try to make that as easy as we can on Breedr. And as Kate was talking about, when those animals come onto farm, we want to be logging, maybe foot bathing them, or if they've got a pastorella issue, we want to make sure that we're logging that medicine. And with Breedr, we've made that really easy. So all I need to do is open up my medicine cabinet. You can see here, these are all the medicines I've had on my farm. I can click in and see that I've used the fly pour on in June, got a little bit left. If I wanted to get rid of that, it's really easy just to dispose the last bits that's left in the box. So it's really easy to do, no messing around with a piece of paper. And then all I need to do to add a new medicine is coming in here and I can scan this little 2D barcode, and then you can see this is a vitamin B1 bottle, and we can see here that it's taken its vitamin B1. It's got all of the information, so the pack size, the batch number, the expiry date, that's all come from that little barcode. And all I need to do is then add who I bought it from. And I bought this one from West Point, and it cost me about £35. I don't think it did, but vitamin B1, maybe it did. So that means then that instantly added. And if I'm the farm manager and I've got a couple of people working on my farm, I might buy the medicines, do that for them, stick it in the cabinets, then it's ready to use, and they can all record that on Breedr as they go. So I've shown you how easy it is to add a medicine, then how easy it is it to use a medicine. So let's just say you bought a new group of sheep and you've given them all a dose of Heptavac or something, or you've given them a vaccine, and so everyone on the farm's got it. So all you need to do is, or let's say it's only the ewe lambs. So I've got a ram in here, so let's say it's only the ewe lambs. So we can say the females, then sex classification, I only want to see the ewe lambs. So this then gives me a list of my ewe lambs, and then all I need to do is just select all. Then it's manage, log activity, and we can see I can log all sorts of activities. So condition score, we could add here if one of them had died, but we want to add a vet med. So I can do administer for cabinet. They're all going to get the same dose, and all I need to do is just select from the menu. We can see that this is oh sorry, that was the wrong one. Vitamin B1, and then I can say, yeah, look, I'm giving everyone a mil or whatever. Not that I would. It's vitamin B1, and then I can just add the reason. This list of reasons is really important. There's an agreed list of reasons by the animal welfare group. One of the things that's coming in as a requirement for Red Tractor in 2023, potentially, it's a recommendation now. I do, you can hear my son. You've got the e-medicine hub, and you'll need to log these medicines with a reason. So it's not just a case of logging a medicine, but you need to give a reason. Now, this is the approved list of reasons. So we can do preventative use. So we're using this preventatively. But that will automatically update your records. And so there's no need to worry about relogging these. We link with eMedicine Hub, so you'll be able to get that data in for your farm assurance. And then also we can come into here, and then it would if it's had a withdrawal, it would update the withdrawal. So you'll know that then you're not selling an animal at the other end, which Kate didn't talk about. They're sending an animal that's still in its withdrawal period. You've got the knowledge to be able to sign that food certification document. So that's medicines. Medicine's really important, a big part of managing store lambs. The other thing in Breedr that we know is a real pain point is weighing livestock. So we link with various on-farm weigheads. So I've got here an EasyWeigh 7i, which you can't see, an EasyWeigh 7i, but we also link with a variety of older True Test gear, and then also the Gallagher HR5 stick reader. And Breedr links via Bluetooth. So when so what that means is that when an animal walks into the weigh crate or the weigh area, we can get a weight that will come across. So you can see here that this is the weight that's just come across from the weigh head, and it's 78 kilos. That's a really big lamb, so that's not necessarily true, but that's what it says on the display, that 78 kilos. So we've got the weight that's on the weigh head has then come across, and I can then scan the EID with a stick reader, or I can also come in here and find the visual ID. So if there was a lamb that was maybe had the last 3 digits of 798, we could add that. And then what I can see in Breedr here is the daily live weight gain and the change in daily live weight gain. So this animal was last weighed 99 days ago. It's a 1 year, 7 months. And we can see that its daily live weight gain is about 120 grams a day, but it's increased. It's doing an extra 50 grams a day. So that's not like a great change, but that's giving me an accurate representation. Maybe actually it's not grown at all, or it's lost weight. And so then that immediately shows me a concern that this animal might have a problem. Now, when you're weighing animals out in the field at the moment and you're not using Breedr, maybe using a manual weigh head, you're writing it down, you'll go back to the office and the computer and upload those things into an Excel spreadsheet. And then you'll see there's a problem. With Breedr, you see it when the animal's in front of you, and then you're able to bring a corrective action. Maybe it does need maybe it needs a treatment. Maybe it is the early signs of pasturella. You can bring that action when that animal is in front of you, and that's really important. So we've made that as easy as possible. And then if you are adding a medicine, if you're not adding a medicine, but you want to add an alert for that animal, you can do that. So it could be that you want next time it comes through the crush, you want to make sure you check that animal again. And so we could add a reminder here for January when you get them, or December when you bring them back in again, and then that will remind you. Also, everyone on your farm will see that, so it's the same thing. And you can weigh a couple of hundred lambs in this, and there won't be any change in performance. And then at the end of the session, all you need to do is save. And we can see here, it'll give you group level statistics and all the information you need to realize how good that weigh session has just been. And then we'll save that. And then that will save onto Breedr, and everyone on your farm has got updated with that. So we've weighed our lambs, we've medicated them, we've done all of those sorts of things. We can see we've got the records on here. But what about buying and selling lambs? One of the things with Breedr, and it's why the cattle version of Breedr is free, and sheep on its own is also going to be free, or just on its own. It's going to be free, and the reason why we're able to do that is because we have a trading platform. So we have here our Breedr market. So you're able to buy and sell cattle and soon sheep, both live weight and dead weight. So before you buy your lambs, you can come and talk to our team, our livestock sales team. We'll be able to help you find outlets for your sheep on dead weight. And then also you'll be able to find sheep for sale, next year for the store lamb season. And what are you going to see when you're finding those lambs for sale? Well, if we tap in here, this is a group of cattle, admittedly, but imagine they're sheep. We can see their statistics, so we can see their daily live weight gain, how many times they've been weighed. We can see what kind of area they're from and a little description. But importantly, and this is what Kate was talking about, I can see here the history of this animal. So I can see that this animal's TB tested. I can see that it's had its vaccinations and also when it had those. So I can, with confidence, buy these and know that these animals have received it. And when these animals are bought and they move to my farm, I then get the data that comes with them. So this will be available from day one of sheep. Those can take some time to get going, but you're also able to buy and sell dead weight sheep and Breedr as well, which is really exciting. And there's lots of cattle available, lots of store cattle. If you've got some space in your shed, do just log into Breedr and you can have a look. So one of the other things Kate talked about, which I found really interesting, was comparing source farms. And Mark, you've talked about it a bit as well, as comparing source farms. Well, in Breedr, we have the ability with all of that data to show you some reports. So on the mobile app, we've got the data capture, the alerts, and then on our web app, we're able to look at some of the more of a deep dive into the data. So I'm going to switch over to sheep here from cattle. I can tap in and I can find the animal that I weighed a minute ago. So we'll be able to look at that animal's history. But also I can tap in here and I can see the texel and I can see this weight predictor, which doesn't currently do sheep just yet, but in the future you'll be able to see weight prediction, and we can also see things like its groups, and then we can also come in here and see the history, and also importantly offspring. So how many offspring does this sheep have? And over time that data will get more and more rich. But this is the sort of stuff we can look at, is our source farm report. So if we swap it to a different business unit, to a different farm, we open up my farm, we can see the performance by birth farm of different animals. So we can see here that there's quite a variety of different CPH numbers, but this is the graph that we want to look at here. So these different colours are different herd numbers, so different herd marks, where the animal was born, and then along the bottom is daily live weight gain. So the larger the circle, the more animals. So we can see here that we've got a good sample size of this herd number, and this herd number here, which is mine. This is my own herd number. I've got suckler herd. And I can see that on my farm, animals from my farm grow on average about 1.13 kilos a day. This is cattle, not sheep. But you can imagine then also, do I want to buy animals from this farm? They're growing about 400, 500 grams a day less than on my farm. Now, if they're for the right price, yes, I probably do. But do I want to be buying animals from this herd number? I've had 24 animals from this herd number. No, I probably don't. I want to avoid this farm. I can see that actually those animals have not performed well in my system. And they're well below the average. And the sample size is big enough that that's relevant. And that's the sort of thing that you can use in Breedr. So we've recorded the weights, and then we've got the web app to then able to analyze. So we then know the herd numbers to avoid, and the farms to get more involved in. One of the other new things as well we're doing is benchmarking, which is a brand new tool that's coming out to in January, which is going to be the ability to benchmark your performance against other farms in Breedr. You can come in here and select as a suckler, but also you'll be able to do it as a store finisher. And I'm able to compare against farms in my context. There's no point me comparing against farms up by Kate and Phil. I want to see farms near me, and I can do that, and I can come in here and select that I only see farms in the southeast, and I can select the groups that I want to see. Now, you're going to be able to look at different metrics, so breeding metrics, so, you know, days to first breeding, repeats, that sort of thing, and also weaning metrics, medicine and mortality, so your medicine usage versus everyone else, how much mortality you've got, but then also age at slaughter, and then also weights. So what is this showing me? I am coming into land, Phil, just so you know if there are any questions in the chat. We've got here, this grey line is the breeder average. So we can see that actually and this blue line is me. So I can see that before weaning, I'm doing pretty well, actually. I'm slightly above the breeder average. But once I hit weaning, there's a problem. My animals stand still for about a month and then don't ever really catch up. Although the gradient is still the same, so they're growing as much. That first month of weaning, they lose a bit of weight, they stand still. Now, that's the last 3 years on my farm. So what am I doing this year that's different? I'm making sure that I maybe don't wean and house in the same week, that I don't wean and weigh and house in the same week. So I'm breaking those up a little bit to reduce the stress on the animals. And if you've got lots of data already, maybe you're using another farm management system, you've got lots of spreadsheets, if you get those into Breedr, you'll very, very quickly be able to start to find trends on your farm. Now, I should say that I'm growing at 172 grams a day, which according to AHDB's national statistics is performing well. But on Breedr, because you guys are sort of self-selecting and a very good group of farmers, I'm actually below the Breedr average. But I'd like to say I am an above average farmer, just an above average breeder farmer. But you'll be able to work this out using your own data, and this will be coming for sheep as well very soon when we do that. So Phil, have we got any questions about Breedr whilst I've got it open?
Yeah, we have.
Presentation again.
Yeah, thanks, James. That was great. And it's good to know that you're an above average farmer too. I would expect nothing less from someone who's been on the NSA Next Generation program. But there was a direct question specifically about the Breedr app, and it's from Olivia Cooper. When will the app be available, please?
Yeah, so we've got 72 sheep farmers across the UK using Breedr sheep at the moment. Every day we're getting more and more feedback. So we haven't quite got a date yet in for when we're going to get it available to you all. But what we are saying is that if you sign up now so download the app, get your account and select sheep, we'll make sure that you're the first to know. And also, if you've got cattle, you can get started with cattle today and get going with that. So you can get all the benefits of what I've just shown you for your cattle, but we will soon have Breedr sheep available for all of you.
So, James, is that what you're asking people to do today after this webinar, is to go onto the website and to register effectively, and then they'll be kept up to date?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're asking. So I'll do the final bit of my presentation, which is, so we've talked a lot about how Breedr is free. And for one species, Breedr is free. So if you've got cattle or sheep, you'll be able to use Breedr for free. And Breedr is going to be free for British sheep farmers across the UK. And you get access to one farm. You can have as many users as you want. If you've got more than one holding number, we can add those into the app. And then you've got access to our trading platform, our team who will help you fulfill those trades. And we're introducing a new tier in January called Benchmark, which is you can have multiple farms. There's a reduced commission, and you can have access to the benchmarking reports and cattle and sheep in the same app. There are two ways you can get this. You can either trade, buy or sell 20 animals in our trading platform, or it's £19.50 a month. But if you trade at some point in the year, you'll then get the rest of the year for free. So it's a really easy to access way of doing it. And so this is the cost of sort of Breedr benchmark. But if you've just got sheep or you've just got cattle, Breedr will remain free. So Phil, to answer your question, what do we want you to do? So go and download the app. Go search Breedr in the App Store or the Play Store. create your account, and you'll be asked what kind of animals you have. Make sure you put sheep down on that. It's a multi-select. And then you can use us for cattle if you've got them now. And then we'll also, you'll be the first to hear about our sheep launch. So that's the thing to do, is to make sure you sign up.
Thanks, James. And could I push you hard enough to for you to give us a target for when you think the sheep launch would happen?
I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks.
We won't hold you to it, of course. No one's going to hold you to it.
No. We're hoping in the next couple of weeks. We'll let people know next week when the date is.
Great.
So, but it's really exciting. We've got 720. We've got 72 sheep farmers at the moment using them, and they're everyone from pedigree producers to big store land finishers to commercial sized store land producers, and the feedback has been really, really, really good. In fact, actually, I had someone text me last night, and what did they say? They said, I spent a lot of time using Breedr sheep, and it looks fantastic. I can't wait to start using it more. So, and that was from a farmer down in Cornwall. So, the sheep app, as much as the cattle app, has been built on the back of the feedback of farmers. So it's really good.
And James, I guess this answers, going back to Mark's point as well, I guess this answers that question, doesn't it? There's a really useful tool here to enable people to make those decisions about where they should be buying and where they should be avoiding.
Yeah, exactly. And you've got to have the data. So we say you wouldn't buy a car without seeing its MOT history. You want to see the logbook, you do an HPI check, and with Breedr, we bring the equivalent for sheep and cattle, and that benefits the buyer as much as it does the seller, because as a seller, you're getting the best price for your animals on the day, because we send them to 4,000 farmers across the country. But also, as a buyer, you're buying the right animals for your system, because you can see the data and you can do that review, as well as the opportunity to review photos and videos of those animals as well.
Right. There's another question. Mark's very active this afternoon. There's another point that's come in from Mark, which is again around the structure of Breedr, really around trading 20 animals. Is that buying or selling? And is it 20 sheep or 20 cattle? Or is the number greater for sheep because they have a lower value per animal?
No, so we're being generous to begin with. So it's 20 animals. That's either 20 sheep or 20 cattle, and you can buy or you can sell. So if you are interested in selling sheep, we haven't got, but you're a Breedr user already, really happy to help you sell those sheep between now and then as well. We've got some people selling deadweight sheep already, so there's the opportunity there as well, and we can do that all over the country. So if you're looking for deadweight opportunities for sheep, do get in contact with the trading team, and you can do that in the app, or you can also give them a call. The numbers on the website.
Thank you, James. Another question from me, if I may, and that's really about integration. Farmers are being asked more and more and more for data here, there, and everywhere. And I think everyone is talking about how we try and make some of these things connect. I think you mentioned the Medicines Hub, which is great. Could you talk a little bit about potential future integration with the Livestock Information Program?
Yeah, I mean, it's so important, Phil. And one of the things that really frustrates me is that as a farmer, I own the data, and every farmer in Breedr owns the data. They own their own data, and I should be able to share that with the people that I want. If I want to send it to eMedicine Hub, the software I use should make it easy. And if I want to, do some work on my carbon calculations, the software that I use to record all my weight should easily talk to the carbon calculation tool. And that's the attitude we bring at Breedr. And it's one of the areas next year we're really going to be working on, is how do we make it easier for different platforms to share data? And you've talked about LIP or LIS, which is the Livestock Information System. It's the new movement system for cattle and sheep in England, and I believe the date is middle of March that it's going live for sheep. And I don't know whether or not we're going to be there for sheep movements in March, but it's definitely the aspiration. But we are working really closely with them on the new cattle side as well. And we've obviously just done the work for Scott EID for cattle, which changed over in the autumn. So no, it is, Phil, it's so important. And one of the things that I'm really excited about is the opportunities that sharing data with your vet, with your feed company, with people like Kate, and making Breedr the place to do that really easy. So if Kate's your sheep consultant, we can invite Kate in and Kate can then look at all your data and help you work out where the best areas are for improvement. So I know there are a few sheep advisors here today. So,
yeah,
absolutely.
Great.
I mean, I'll bring Kate in a moment because I've got a question for you as well, Kate, if I may. But Mark has made another point really about a real compliment. I think that Breedr has bridged the gap between data and information, and they are two different things. It's one thing gathering data, but actually converting into information is quite another, really. So the app is an intuitive tool giving farmers that information when they need it. Let's make the conversation about information, not data. That's good. That's a really
good point.
Really interesting point. Yeah. So a question to Kate. Kate, you know, from what you're seeing out in the field, how fast do you think that the transition is moving towards farmers that are willing and able to use this sort of technology? Are we on the verge of a revolution in this area?
Well, I'd like to think that, Phil, but I'm not sure about that. I think it's steady progress in the sheep industry. Obviously, there's youngsters really full of enthusiasm and very IT literate, are very, very happy to take on this sort of thing. But it's a bit slower with the older generation. So I think it'll just be a slow burner with those older shepherds and farmers. But I think the young generation are more than happy to grasp all of this stuff and run with it as fast as they can. So I think it's a combination, Phil. But I think maybe, you know, declining support payments will encourage more along this line to really analyse what they're doing more carefully and realise they've got to be more productive and efficient. So it will drive some people in this direction, I'm sure.
And ease of use is a really key component of that, isn't it? Really, you know, there aren't many farmers now that haven't got smartphones. People are using their phones. The movement, the transition from, you know, PCs to laptops to phones now is, I think, has got the potential to make quite a difference.
This is really brilliant, I think, in the sense that, if you can hold it in your hand and walk around the farm and write things down, or, you know, record things as you go around, like medicine treatments or whatever, marvelous, so much easier. Farmers do not want to go back into the house to start the computer and you know, load things up. So this is much better, definitely.
Excellent. Well, look, it's just coming up to 2 o'clock, so I think we ought to close. And Mark's put a comment in the chat as well, suggesting that I buy everyone a beer. Quite where that's come from, I'm not sure really, but yeah, I think whoever has put all this together probably does deserve some congratulations and probably a beer as well, really. And
I'll take the full kudos for that. So that's excellent.
Well, perhaps you'll stand the beer as well in that case, James. I'd be delighted to at some stage when we get a chance to meet up face to face. But listen, just to thank everyone for joining this afternoon. You know, I think it's been a fantastic session. And thanks very much, Kate, for your presentation. And thanks to James for the run through the Breedr program as well. So, yeah, thanks very much, everyone. And as I said at the start, it's great to be working with Breedr on this type of initiative, and always good to be working with Kate as well. I look forward to working with you again in the future.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Phil. We'll make sure we send the recording round. So thanks for everyone who came.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye,
everyone. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.